Hey, welcome back to Beyond the Rings Short Stories. This is Jeff Wells. I've had the opportunity and privilege to have gospel conversations with people gathered in Olympic host cities around the world at 10 different Olympics over 20 years so far. Lord willing, the next decade will bring another 3 Olympic outreaches: Paris, Italy, and good old USA. You want more information about that, visit our website, beyondtherings.net, and you can see more about that. Today, I want to talk to you about a cumulative opportunity of being at the Olympics. And this is kind of an expansion of the idea of the Acts 1:8 all in one place, how we will be witnesses for Jesus in Jerusalem. That's our immediate area, Judea, kind of our region or state, if you will. Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, not only just the area, but also crossing cultural and racial lines and the ends of the earth. And today I want to talk to you about the ends of the earth in that, having shared at all these different Olympics, literally every continent on the globe except for Africa and Antarctica, have been blessed to experience some unique things. And it may seem odd or obvious. I don't know how you would feel about this, but to me, I've learned a great deal about the cultures in which these various Olympics have been hosted, those cities, through their cuisine. You learn so much about the people that make up those races, those people groups, those nations. And honestly, I think it's those kinds of things that God uses to break down our man-made barriers that oftentimes can be significant in our attempt and our abilities to connect with people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. We see more differences than similarities. But yet God chooses to use something as simple as food to show us the richness of the diversity of his creation through different cultures, different races, and even different foods that we don't normally have access to in our limited day in and day view of life. So a couple ones that stick out to me was being in Beijing in 2008. Again, it was my first time being in Asia. I've since been back to Asia a few other times. I confess I'm a huge fan of the Asian culture, the Asian people. The Asian language scares me, so I don't even try. And many of you are already aware of the fact that we adopted an Asian daughter. She's Chinese. And so you could say I have a special place in my heart for Asia and Asians, and that is absolutely true. And so in Beijing 2008, Summer Olympics was my first time being in Asia. And one of the things that's really interesting about the Chinese culture, Chinese people in general, is that they are very interested in natural benefits of food, of drink, in getting minerals and vitamins from natural sources. And they believe that it kind of has a dual purpose. It is healthy and physiologically beneficial to them, but they also see that they do also attach somewhat of a supernatural connection to it as well, where through those elements, you receive special blessings. So there is that combined element as well. But I'll never forget being in China and visiting some of these smaller mom and pop shops when we were shopping for souvenirs or we were getting noodles or whatever. And seeing them have like mason jars full of what looked like, pine needles and different things floating in what looked like water, but they would drink this, and it would not be uncommon for them to be consuming what would be called a tea, but it's not sweet. It's not about the flavor. It's about the benefits from it. And so that was a common sight. But in the streets, especially in one particular street in Beijing, there were this whole line of street vendors, and they had all kinds of things. They had scorpions on sticks. They had white sea snakes on sticks. They had roaches and just all kinds of, I can't even remember half the things, but as vivid as your imagination can be, there were offerings of those kinds of things. The idea was they wouldn't cook them for long because they didn't want to cook out the benefits of the minerals and all that. And so literally, me and a teammate decided we were going to try one of the things. So he decided on a white sea snake. It's just what you think. It's a skewer with a white snake that's been skewered through it. And the cooking consisted of essentially a conductive oven, grill top, and they simply took that skewer, they laid it on one side for maybe a minute, flipped it over, did the other side, maybe a minute, and then handed it to you. And he ate a bite, I ate a bite. It was interesting. It is a word I can use to describe it. Not particularly tasty, not particularly something I would want to repeat. But it was an interesting experience to try it, I'm not a bold, brave, foodie. It takes a lot for me to try things that are new and different, that are radical like that. But it was interesting. And again, it was interesting in and of itself because it's a fun story, but it was also a learning moment for me to get a little more insight into the people group of the Chinese and to learn about what they value, what they appreciate, what they seek. And learning that has helped me be sensitive to who they are as a people group, to be alert and aware to their cultural and environmental impacts on who they are, much like I have as a Westerner and an American. And so that was an interesting experience. And then you go from that to something more of just a fun eating experiences when we were in Pyeongchang for the 2018 Winter Olympic Games in South Korea. And a very common thing in Korea is Korean barbecue. And I thought I knew what Korean barbecue was from a Western American perspective, but in reality, it was much more than that. So basically, you go in, you have your menu, you kind of say, I want this, and they bring you basically a plate of raw meat and vegetables. And on where your table is, there's like a little barbecue grill right there at your table, kind of built into your table. And so the idea is you kind of build your skewer of meat and vegetables and whatever else you want on it, and then you cook it yourself on the Korean barbecue pit in front of you. It was a very interesting experience. It was completely different, and of course the food was wonderful. It was very fresh, and to know that you were the one in control of how much you want it cooked, how little you want it cooked, how long you want it cooked, and all that just added to the uniqueness of it. And then, of course, being in Athens, Greece in 2004, had to have a gyro or a gyro, however you pronounce it. I don't know. I still don't know after eating one in Greece. But it was vastly different than the ones I'd had growing up in America, eating one off the lamb slab at the mall, Greek kind of fast food Greek place that many places had when I was growing up in the 80s. But it was delicious, and it was, again, unique to that culture that helped me understand it a little more deeply. And then, of course, you go back to Sydney 2000. And that's not true. I'd heard the word Vegemite because of a song that came out in the 80s that was popular when I was a teenager, but I had no clue what it was. The best way I can describe Vegemite, if you've never had it, it's kind of like peanut butter, but imagine if peanut butter was made out of like sardines. Very salty, very tangy, not fishy tasting so much, but just very strong, tangy, salty, peanut buttery type paste. And so Vegemite, you'll hear of a Vegemite sandwich. It's essentially what we would call a peanut butter. Again, a similarity would be a peanut butter sandwich. It's not sweet. It's sour. It's salty. It's tangy. It's very, very popular in Australia. Essentially, Vegemite, my understanding, and I could be wrong, but my understanding is Vegemite is kind of harvested from large vats where they're making beer, and it's kind of a leftover residue that they scrape out and collect, and that they then turn into this spread that's a Vegemite spread. And so the place we were staying had little packets of Vegemite out all the time, and I finally got brave or stupid enough to try one. It was pretty nasty. Not a fan. If you are, God bless you. More power to you. But it was very different. And again, you got to remember, Sydney was my first international exposure. And so you're in, when in Rome, well, I was in Sydney. So you're in Australia, you eat Vegemite. And so did it. Don't need to do it again. But it was very interesting. And then finally, not finally, but I did get to go to Tokyo in the fall of 2019. While I did not get to go during the Olympic Games themselves, and I'll share more about that in another podcast, I did get to go in the fall of 2019 as part of a prayer and planning team. And while there, again, I love Asia, love Asian food, love the Asian people, absolutely love Tokyo. Biggest city in the world. They figure over 20 million people, very dense population, but I loved it. Absolutely loved it. One of my greatest regrets was not getting to go back to Tokyo. But while we were there, there's a famous alley, Harmonica Yokocho alley, and it is an alley, and there's just these little outcroppings of not even really a restaurant. It's kind of like a old time diner where you just got the counter and some chairs, some stools, and they're cooking it right there in front of you. And we got to eat there one time, and it was delicious. Again, thing about Asian food, by and large, it's very fresh, very tasty, a lot of vegetables, very vegetable oriented, and just very enjoyable. And I'd be less than honorable and honest if I didn't tell you this little tidbit about eating at the Olympics. Here's a little useless trivia for you. McDonald's is a worldwide sponsor of the Olympic Games. That has all kinds of trails we could go down all day long, athletes in McDonald's, right? Well, consequently, I have had McDonald's at every Olympic city I've been in. Not proud of that, but it is true. Now, it's interesting with McDonald's anyway. They will have the typical McDonald's offerings that you will get anywhere in America or anywhere else around the world. But then they will often have a unique sandwich or dish to that country or culture. And so, like the McDonald's in Italy, they had a cordon bleu sandwich, which was a chicken sandwich made very similar to as you would a cordon bleu type of dish, which I know is not Italian. Maybe that wasn't there. Maybe that was in Paris, Paris airport. They had a Parmesan sandwich, like a Parmesan cheese chicken sandwich with Parmesan with mozzarella sauce on it. And so each one of the McDonald's has a unique sandwich or dessert or something unique to that culture. So yes, McDonald's has been a part of my unique Olympic cuisine experience. Now, why do I share that? What does this have to do with the Olympics? What does this have to do with sports? What does it have to do with the gospel? Again, I have experienced through all these different cuisines in all these different countries in all these different continents how great and diverse and creative God is, both in the people and the environment where people live and learn and grow and adjust. Many of the foods that are unique to different cultures around the world are directly tied to what they have access to in their area that they can utilize for food, as well as what their limitations are, as well as what they have an abundance of. It should be no shock that China is one of the largest producers of rice around the world. So guess what? There's a lot of rice dishes, and it's not just because it's the largest producer of it, but it's also very filling and it's very inexpensive. And so therefore it's a very natural food to make a regular part of an Asian person's diet. So God has used cuisines to help expand my understanding of the various people groups that make up the 7 billion population of the world that needs to hear about and experience God's love. And thankfully, through the Olympic outreach opportunities that I've been a part of and hope to be in the future, we'll get to share the gospel story with people from all over the world. And it would not be uncommon to be having a sit-down lunch break during the Olympics and for those to turn into gospel conversations. And God uses those. One came to my mind just as I was saying that. We were in a pizzeria in Italy. Of course, right? You're in Italy. You're having pizza. We have our hats on and our lanyards with our pins on them that we've collected. And we're eating our pizza, and there's a couple sitting next to us who have a bunch of pens, and they're all NBC pens, which NBC is another corporate sponsor, and they're the Olympic broadcaster for the United States. At least they buy the contract. I don't remember how long it goes, but so they're sitting there, and so after we finish our pizza and they finish theirs, the wife turns and says, "I couldn't help but notice all your pens. Are you guys trading pens or whatever?" And again, we use pen trading as the introduction. So we'll trade pens. So any pen that we've collected or up to this point is fair game, at least the way I look at it. Oftentimes I'll leave like the pens that I want to trade up on my hat, and I'll put my non-traders on my lanyard, or I'll do it the other way. I'll put my the pens I'm willing to trade on my lanyard and the pens I'm not willing to trade up on my hat. And so we began engaging and talking about, she's like, "Oh, I like that pen. I want that pen. And I'll give you this pen for that pen." And so we go through all that. Well, we don't trade the gospel pen. We give that away free, and we don't sell it. And so what we do is we will engage in this gospel conversation. We will engage in this pen trading opportunity. And then we will say, "Hey, I have another pen for you. I'll give it to you if you let me tell you the story behind it." It's then that we pull out the gospel pen, and they're like, "You're going to give me this pen?" "Yeah." And remember, we just had to trade for these other pens, but this pen is special, and it's free because it's like God's love for us. He gave us his love for free, but it cost him everything. So we used the pen to go through the gospel, sharing our story about how we're separated from God and how we need Jesus and how Jesus died to pay the penalty for our sins. And if we place our faith and trust in him, he'll enter our lives, take over, and change us radically and help us to experience the most profound, impactful life here, as well as the promise of eternity and hereafter. So I got to share that story with her and her husband. Come to find out, they were big advertising buyers in the States, one of the largest semi-truck dealerships in the world. And then in that cafe, her husband prayed to receive Christ, all because we were enjoying that local cuisine, enjoying a pizza in Italy that transitioned to talking about pens and sharing the gospel and a man coming to faith in Christ. That's what can happen at the Olympics. That's what pen training at the Olympics is all about. Thank you for tuning in for this one. If you want to learn more about how you can be a part and join the team in supporting future Olympic ministry outreach, just go to beyondtherings.net where you can learn more. Thanks much.